Hello and welcome to our newscast, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin with the latest from the hostage crisis in Sydney that came to a violent end overnight. Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott held a press conference just about an hour ago. He praised the efforts of the police and first responders and described the hostage taker Man Haron Monis as a deeply disturbed individual infatuated with extremism. Abbott said the armed gunman was well known to local police but was not on any terror watch list. Answering reporters' questions, he said there was no intelligence of a forthcoming terror attack. And as Australians come to grips with the 16-hour ordeal, authorities are trying to piece together exactly what happened in those final moments. Eunice Kim reports.
A barrage of gunfire in the early hours of Tuesday, shortly after 2 a.m. Heavily armed officers stormed the Lindt Chocolate Cafe in Sydney's business centre to free the terrified hostages held by an Islamic State sympathiser.
We have accounted for, at this stage, 17 hostages. That includes the 5 that escaped yesterday and a number that have been caught up with, some with traumatic injuries, some with medical conditions.
A Korean-Australian college student working at the shop in Martin Place was one of those who managed to escape. 2 others met different fates. 34-year-old cafe manager Tori Johnson and 38-year-old mother of 3 Katrina Dawson were pronounced dead at the hospital. With the 16-hour standoff now behind them, Australians are trying to go on with their lives, still very much in mourning.
It's absolutely devastating that could happen, and that just anyone going about their business, going to get a coffee in the morning, and to have something so tragic and horrible happen to them and the families and extended families is just horrific.
So I think everyone's just in shock and just trying to come to grips with it and try to understand, but it's just too difficult to understand.
Authorities are now inspecting the crime scene and promising a thorough investigation.
There are a lot of people for them to interview, and a lot of people are very tired at the moment. A lot of people are very emotional. We have to consider people's health and their welfare and their mental health at the moment. So this will take time for us to gather all the information so that we can piece together bit by bit exactly what happened.
They'll also have to answer how the gunman, the 50-year-old self-styled cleric Man Haron Monis, with a history of violence and mental health issues, was allowed to walk into the chocolate cafe that fateful Monday morning. Eunice Kim, ARIRANG News.
In other news, Korea's first Ebola aid medical staff team started training in England on Monday local time. Once they're done there, they will head to the most severely hit country of Sierra Leone in West Africa. Kwon So-ah has more.
Korean medical personnel are getting ready to join the fight against the deadly Ebola crisis in Sierra Leone. 4 doctors and 6 nurses arrived in southeast England this week for 5 days of training that will prepare them for what they'll face on the ground in West Africa. The most crucial part of their training is learning how to put on the personal protective equipment correctly. Putting the gear on alone takes around 15 minutes. Britain has been among the countries leading the global response to Ebola, already sending hundreds of medical staff to West Africa. The care facility that the Korean group will be deployed to was set up by Britain.
Very much. The purpose of the training has a lot to do with maximizing the effectiveness of the medics who are going out as part of the response and making sure that the quality of care is high, but also safe for those who are providing it.
The Korean medical team is scheduled to fly to Sierra Leone this weekend and begin 1 month of caregiving at the end of December. More volunteers will be dispatched next year. While the epidemic has slowed in Guinea and Liberia, the number of patients in Sierra Leone continues to rise at an alarming rate. This is why health agencies say it's not only important to focus on treatment, but on preventing infection. The World Health Organization says new diagnostic tests may be available in the next few months, which could detect the virus in around 15 minutes. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Korea's transportation officials have confirmed that now a former VP of Korean Air Cho Hyun-ah, more known now for her nut rage, did verbally abuse crew members during the incident. Korean Air is facing a 3-week suspension or millions of dollars of fines, while Cho will face criminal charges. Shin Se-min reports.
Korean Air will be either forced to suspend operations for 21 days or face fines of up to $1.3 million for the event sparked by the now infamous nut rage incident surrounding now former Vice President Cho Hyun-ah. In a briefing on Tuesday, the Transportation Ministry said it will take administrative action against the airline after determining that aviation safety regulations were violated when a Korea-bound flight returned to the gate to deboard the head of the cabin crew. A special team will also be formed to review Korean Air's safety management system and determine whether the company's culture influenced the pilot's decision to delay the flight. The ministry said the pilot was negligent in his duties. The troubled Cho Hyun-ah may face criminal charges. Prosecutors have summoned Cho for questioning on Wednesday and plan to seek an arrest warrant on allegations that she, too, might have violated aviation regulations. Prosecutors have already searched the headquarters of Korean Air and questioned cabin crew members and passengers. The CEO of Korean Air, Cho Yang-ho, and his daughter, the now former VP, have apologized publicly for the incident. Korean Air also took out a written advertisement in major newspapers on Tuesday saying that the company was deeply sorry. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
The value of the Russian ruble has taken a nosedive in recent months. The currency sank to a new low at one point on Monday, prompting the Central Bank of Russia to raise its key interest rate. But with the fall in oil prices, the prospects for the Russian economy look bleak. Kim Young-gil tells us more.
Since the start of this year, the Russian ruble has tumbled more than 45% against the US dollar. Falling oil prices and Western sanctions dragged the ruble to 60 against the dollar at the close of the Moscow exchange on Monday. In response, Russia's central bank hiked its key interest rate from 10.5% to 17%. Despite spending more than $70 billion to support the ruble since the start of the year, the central bank has been unsuccessful in its attempts to stabilize the currency.
The central bank is doing everything it can, but I think almost its hands are tied at the moment, and this is down to Putin to try and resolve the matter, something he just doesn't seem very willing to do.
There is a segment of the Russian population that blames Western sanctions on the ruble's decline.
Most likely it is all due to politics, so all those things they introduced against our country have an impact. They're the only reason, only that.
The World Bank has warned that Russia's economy, which is heavily reliant on oil exports, could shrink by 0.7% next year if oil prices continue to slide. Brent crude hit a 5-year low of $60 a barrel on Monday. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
As opposed to Russia, though, the drop in crude oil prices is expected to bring some positive effects to the Korean economy. And according to an industry report, that effect will start to show in the second quarter of next year. A report by High Investment and Securities released on Tuesday says the nation's manufacturing production will be among the first to feel a boost. The semiconductor, display, and auto industries will also benefit from the price fall, while the construction and food and beverage sectors will face a rather negative effect. Despite the government's rigorous drive to encourage young entrepreneurs to begin startups, the proportion of those in the nation has declined, and this is prompting concerns. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
The ratio of new startups run by entrepreneurs in their 20s and 30s is on the decline in Korea, while those started by the older generation is on the steady rise. Data from Statistics Korea shows the proportion of startups run by those under the age of 40 stood at 27% in the first 3 quarters of this year, down from 28.2% in 2013. New startups led by young entrepreneurs made up for more than 30% of the total in 2008 when the agency first started compiling related data. The ratio of new startups established by those in their 50s, on the other hand, has risen 5.2 percentage points over the past 6 years. The number of new startups led by Koreans in their 50s or older also jumped more than 15% in the January to September period this year from a year earlier, while the number of new startups led by those in their 20s and 30s rose a mere 4.7% during the same period. Experts say the trend is bad news for the economy. The rising ratio of new startups by the older generation shows younger entrepreneurs who usually want to take more risks and open more innovative, dynamic businesses are put off by government regulations. They also say Korea's young people may have lost some of their entrepreneurial spirit. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Koreans spend well over 3.5 hours, 219 minutes to be exact, a day using their smartphones. The KT Economics and Management Research Laboratory says this excludes time receiving or making actual phone calls. People in their 20s use their smartphones the most, especially during rush hour commutes and lunch breaks. Most of the time is spent on social network applications like Facebook and Twitter, or mobile shopping sites. A previous study in 2012 said Koreans spent about an hour and a half a day peering into their phones. Now, there are many ways to incorporate information and communications technology into our everyday lives. One way the government is seeking is to use it for the better response and better handling of disasters and for boosting the productivity in the agricultural sector. Park Ji-won tells us more.
Korea's information and communications technology and scientific R&D abilities are among the best in the world, as proven by the nation's strong export items like smartphones and semiconductors. The government wants to foster the nation's strength in scientific areas to bolster 2 main sectors: disaster management systems and agriculture. The decision was reached at a presidential office meeting presided over by President Park Geun-hye on Tuesday, with over 100 experts in the field taking part. Korea has suffered a series of big disasters this year alone, like Seoul ferry accident and a recent ventilation grate collapse in October that killed more than a dozen people. So the following steps are the government's strategies to apply ICT to disaster management. As for better prevention, the government will widely install safety sensors to diverse facilities like aged bridges and tunnels. And to swiftly respond to any disasters, intelligent CCTV surveillance systems will be used, which has artificial intelligence software that can recognize and analyze dangerous situations. To minimize damage from disasters, the government plans to focus on developing disaster management simulator programs and improving cutting-edge rescue facilities like rescue robot technologies. The government will also apply ICT to the nation's farming sectors to make them into higher value-added industries. Universities, businesses, and the government will work together on developing smart farm models by 2016, which will use diverse information technologies to improve agricultural productivity. R&D investments and education for nurturing technology-intensive agricultural venture projects are also one of the government's strategies to strengthen the nation's agricultural sector. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
South Korea's opposition party lawmaker Park Ji-won crossed the inter-Korean border this morning to deliver a wreath to North Korea in time for the third anniversary of the passing of late leader Kim Jong-il. The wreath he's bringing is in the name of Lee Hee-ho, the widow of late South Korean President Kim Dae-jung. He and 6 other delegates from the Kim Dae-jung Peace Center will be returning to the South at around 5 p.m. today. Seoul's Unification Ministry stressed that the visit was purely humanitarian and cautioned against overanalyzing the trip. There have been signs here and there along the way that China-North Korea ties have been weakening, especially since the execution of Chang Song-taek last year. But come this Wednesday, it will be more evident as there is speculation that a representative from China will not be attending a ceremony in honor of late leader Kim Jong-il. Connie Kim has more.
When North Korea marks the 3rd anniversary of former leader Kim Jong-il's death on Wednesday, they're likely to do so without a representative from China. Last year, the Chinese ambassador to North Korea, Liu Hongchai, appeared at a ceremony for the occasion. But a diplomatic source in Beijing says that won't be the case this year because Pyongyang did not extend an invite. Now that's representative of the frost that has developed on Sino-North Korea ties. There have been no high-level talks between Beijing and Pyongyang this year, and when Chinese President Xi Jinping visited the peninsula this past July, he didn't stop over in Pyongyang before coming to Seoul, as is a tradition for a Chinese leader. The two countries have been hoping to foster economic ties through the development of special economic zones, but those plans came to a screeching halt late last year with the execution of Chang Song-taek, who had been one of North Korea's most powerful figures and had close ties to Beijing. And in the 12 months since, China's crude oil exports to Pyongyang have been cut off completely, dropping from 578,000 tons last year to 0 this year. But there are some who predict relations will take a turn next year.
China is highly likely to side with North Korea when the UN Security Council discusses Pyongyang's human rights violations. This is when relations between the two countries will normalize.
Professor Yang expects high-level talks to take place at some point next year, by October at the latest, when North Korea marks the 70th anniversary of the Communist Party. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
North Korea has warned the United States that it will have to bear the responsibility for a breakdown in efforts to denuclearize the Korean peninsula, adding that Washington is pressuring Pyongyang over its human rights issues without any concrete evidence. North Korea's foreign ministry spokesperson said Monday that Washington will face the most severe counteraction for its offensive policy towards the North. This comes after a matter of days after the U.S. Congress said it will up its spending next year for building and managing a database looking into North Korea's political prison camps. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's win in this past weekend's snap election has some in Korea worried because of Abe's right-wing views and policies. Watchers say this could further strain Seoul-Tokyo ties. Lee Ji-yoon has the story.
Korea isn't planning on holding summit talks with Japan anytime soon. A government source in Seoul says Korea will continue, quote, normalized relations with Japan, but there will be no summit. President Park Geun-hye has made clear that she will not meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe unless Japan sincerely apologizes for its wartime atrocities. And with Abe's election win, many experts believe it's highly unlikely that he'll suddenly change his ultra-rightist political views. This means Abe is likely to keep on claiming the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island as Japan's territory. He's also likely to keep on denying that Japanese soldiers forced Korean women into sexual slavery during the Second World War. In fact, Abe reportedly plans to keep all his current cabinet ministers. One of those ministers is Eriko Yamatani. She wanted to remove a monument in New Jersey dedicated to the Korean women who were abducted by the Imperial Japanese Army. Some experts say, though, that Japan might try to change its diplomatic measures for the better. One reason could be the U.S., Japan's close ally. It's been prodding Tokyo to improve ties with Seoul because the U.S. wants to boost Washington-Seoul-Tokyo ties to counter the rise of China. For now, experts say unless Abe steps away from his nationalistic path, diplomacy will continue to be his Achilles heel. Lee Jun, ARIRANG News.
And Abe winning that election means he will get another chance to push on with his so-called Abenomics policies, of course. Connie Lee reports on the impact of this, especially on the Korean economy.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's election win enables the leader to push on with Abenomics, his set of aggressive fiscal and monetary expansionary policies.
You know, we're talking about 1, 2, 3 years for certain reforms to come through, and I think that gives him a strong mandate.
But the stronghold of Abenomics is expected to hurt Korean producers and exports. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol says that if Japanese firms start cutting prices on the backdrop of improved profits and financial structures, Korean products could face declining sales. Analysts say the value of the Japanese yen against the U.S. dollar, the Korean won, and other currencies could continue to weaken and make Korean exports more expensive in the global market. This is bad news for Korean firms that compete with Japanese companies. So some advise that local businesses should strengthen their product competitiveness and invest more in their R&D during this time. The Prime Minister's Abenomics agenda was first introduced in 2012 to boost the economy. And despite controversy over its effects, it could stay as long as Abe stays in power, possibly until 2018. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And in cultural news, a couple of contemporary artists with very different styles have opened solo exhibitions respectively here in Seoul. They are both artists who have stayed true to their roots. Our Im Yoon-hee takes us to those exhibitions.
Since rising to fame for his fusion of Japan's Atom animation and Disney's Mickey Mouse to create Atomouse, artist Lee Dong-gi has opened solo exhibitions around the country, and most recently at the Gallery Hyundai. Under the title Zero Gravity, Lee displays a host of works that reflect his grounding in pop art and show his examination of images from everyday life. Through random selections and combinations, Lee portrays an image or images, each with meaningful depth.
I think my works have an element of modern society, the uncertain and the obscure.
Another artist with a new exhibition is Song Hyun-soo. She spent most of her artistic career in Germany, but her Korean heritage is still the dominant factor in her works. With each brushstroke, Song goes back to her days in the Korean countryside, where she spent hours watching her mother spin thread from raw cotton. These memories come through in many of her works, but among them, a recent addition is a painting that pays tribute to the Seoul ferry disaster. Though she began her artistic career abroad, Song believes that past memories can never be erased.
It's similar with people who study literature as well. Whatever country, whatever region you grew up in, the influence is seen in the work.
Each one of her pieces only contains but a few lines, yet these precise lines took decades of practice, something she's committed to every step along the way. Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Yesterday, snow has cleared out, but due to the freezing temperatures, we're left with some icy roads. So be extra careful out there. But for those of you near the capital, prepare for another cold snap. Now, along with that, snow clouds are expected to form once again in the west coast, but the only areas that could be affected are in the south and on Jeju Island. But about 5 to 10 centimeters are expected to fall along the west coast and in Jeollanam-do province. And as well as we move further to the east, totals will drop down to less than 1 centimeter. Now, if you think it's cold today, make sure to bundle up tomorrow because it's going to be the coldest day of the season so far. And we'll be looking at a low of -12 degrees in the morning and only gets up to -6 degrees during the day. Now to our readings for today, so we'll peak to -3 this afternoon, and the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan are higher at 3 and 6 degrees. And to other regions such as Jeju Island can expect rain and snow with highs of 7. Dokdo hits 5 degrees, while Mangkeungang is cold at -10. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful day.
And that's a wrap for now from me and the rest of the team in Seoul. Thank you very much for staying with us. We'll be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time.